welcome back to James Redman TV and welcome to another Redman Roundup and welcome with more news. Now I've got a big live stream later because I haven't done it for a couple of days and therefore I've missed out on the Fabinho news, I've missed out on the Trent and Virgil van Dijk officially being announced as the captain and vice-captain news. So I want to give those thoughts in later stream as they was yesterday's news and the Redman Roundup is for today's news and today's news is not about them. So we do know Fabinho's gone and we do know who's just been announced captain and I think that's important for me to give you my opinion. I'm sure you'll be curious. We'll talk about that later. For now, action is happening in the midfield ins department. Now, what is happening is the question. Liverpool have been in contact with Southampton. We've offered another bid, I believe this time of £42 million, plus a few add-ons. That bid has now been officially rejected. It was on the table for a while. It's now rejected by Southampton. A third bid is looking to be put on the table, I assume. Southampton really want £50 million, which is more than fair enough. They've just gone into the Championship. They're not probably in any rush to sell Lavia because he's so important to the team, and therefore they're holding out for 50 mil. Also, it's important to note that we need a CDM, and if I'm a club and I see somebody who's just, let's say if I'm an Xbox seller and I've just saw somebody get their Xbox broken, and let's say if we're in the middle of fucking nowhere and there's not a game shop round the corner, I'm probably going to charge them a little bit more for an Xbox, and that's just because there's business scumbags, and if I was a business scumbag, I'm doing the same thing. The point that I'm leading to is that, of course, we need to pay top dollar for Lavia. We need to be willing to do it, and if we're willing to pay 45 million, just go out and spend an additional 5 million. I don't think it's a big deal. I always say to people why I want Lavia. I always say why he can improve us over the long term. I think a few years with Jurgen Klopp under his development, I think he becomes a top player. And I think he's already got a fine resume for what is a young player. You think about some young players' resumes. You think about Lavia's resume. It's up there. It's a top-class resume. So that's why I'll sit there and I'll say I'll give him a chance. And I think he can come in and be the right here, right now player. I do. I think he can be that player. But that I can understand that is over-ambitious. And I think that's why it's important to be open to getting another midfielder, and that's what this video is kind of about as well, because Paul Joyce confirms that we might be going out and getting Andre. Who's Andre? He's a midfielder from Fluminense in Brazil. He's worth 20 million and the club have been scouting him. Now, this is interesting because I was on the chat the other day and people were like, we need to get more South American players. We need to go into the market more and buy the gems that's over there. And it was a good point because, you see City with Alvarez and you see other teams. I think Chelsea have just signed that Andre Santos. And you do think about those old school South American ballers who literally took over the game at one point. And don't get me wrong, that's not to say that the European game never had a stronghold of good players or, a group of great players. I just think in the aspect of South American, I think you think of some of the best of all time. They come from that region. You think of Lionel Messi, you think of Maradona, you think of Pele. If you get a special type of football, Luis Suarez, if you get a special type of footballer, tends to grow from the roots of a South American country. So that's why I think in this aspect, I am always happy to scout in that market. And I would be intrigued to see what our scouting is like in that market more often. So I don't know much about this Andre dude. I know that we're willing to pay 20 million for Andre. I know that he's somewhat young and I know he's in the Brazilian league. Besides that, my knowledge is very limited. It might also be required to do a little compilation later on man like Andre. A few of you have mentioned him to me. Apparently he sounds quite decent. And it's one that people are a fan of. They like his attributes. And again, if I'm a fan of the attributes, I don't care if he's from the Brazilian league. I just care about him being good. There's plenty of players who have came from a South American league and done fantastic. Let me reference, probably besides Fabinho, funnily enough, who just went, our best CDM in the Premier League era. I'd say it's Mascherano. And I think that he went from Boca Juniors to West Ham for 6 months and then to Liverpool in 2006. So I think that'd be intriguing to see what has happened if we went out there and bought from that market again underneath Jurgen Klopp as a coach, which if he wants the player, then great. But then the question that you've got to ask is, does he fit into the new system? But that's why for now we've just got to analyse the attributes because we don't know the freaking system. So the updates in this video specifically is about Lavia. It's also about Andre. And I suppose I'll touch on the Fabinho thing and then I might even touch on the captaincy thing and we can go in depth on it in the stream later. But the Fabinho news that came out was interesting. Of course, there was a cool video from Al Ittihad and they were confirming him about going there and they had a tiger because all the news about the dogs over here and apparently it was fine. To be honest, I got very emotional over the Fabinho, probably more emotional than Henderson. Not because Henderson was a less important figure or anything. I don't know, there was something so sincere about the exit. You know, I know Fabinho's wife was a huge supporter of Liverpool, and I know she was a big part of, you know, I know that she was a big influencer amongst the group of girls who were friends, you know, like all the wives of each other. I think she was important for that. Rebecca Tavares, she was always a well-known figure, you know, considering she was a wag, you know what I mean? Sorry if wag is a disrespectful term, I just know that's what they used to call footballers' wives back in the day. And it's quite cool when you look back at it, mate. There was no cheesy scripted video, there was none of that. It was just straight up, I'm going to miss you, I'm going to hope to come back again, you know. Weren't this big massive hoopla that it didn't need to be. Felt sincere. He's now going to go and get loads of money. We now need to rebuild. And it seems to be that we're going to go out and get 2 more midfielders, to be honest, with the links that are coming out. And I've been confident of this for a while. Where I think we will fall short is centre-back, to be honest. But that's my brief opinion on that. I'm happy for Fabinho. I believe we can replace him very easily. And I'm not talking about peak Fabinho. And it's always ideal to replace peak Fabinho. But I don't think he has been peak Fabinho for the past 18 months. But we can talk about that more on stream. Now, you know, I probably should touch on the captaincy situation, as that's a situation that I've missed over the last couple of days. And again, all these things, if you feel like I'm going through them too quick, don't worry, we're going to delve into them on tonight's stream at around 9:30 p.m, and that actually will be a stream. I apologise that I haven't been uploading the past few days. Van Dijk getting captain, Trent getting vice captain, I didn't mind. I think somebody like Alisson, I'm just going to put my cap forward for Alisson as someone who I think deserved a big shout. And I think the consideration or lack of consideration for Alisson just because he's a goalkeeper, it's a weird one for me. I don't think your captain needs to be an outfield player, and I don't think if you make your goalkeeper captain, that means your outfield players automatically go silent, because the most common argument for me when I mention Alisson as captain is, oh, we wouldn't be able to shout to the strikers. Does that mean the people who was going to shout at the strikers are now no longer going to shout to the strikers because they're not wearing an armband? I'd like to think our leaders are as vocal as possible, especially if they feel like it's necessary to be vocal. So I don't think it would have made a difference. I think the armband, you know, let's analyse what the armband is. Who deserves it most? Who's the biggest leader? Then how do we define leadership? And I just think when you think and look at the attributes of what's required to be a good leader and somebody that people look up to, I think Alisson meets the criteria. I think, you know, he holds himself posture-wise. I think he's somebody who's got huge integrity. I think he's someone who is very humble, but also someone who can get a point across. And he's somebody who, when we play better because of him. When we play, we can take more risks because he's so good. So he's not only a leader by the way he performs, he's a leader by example. And then if Virgil's going to be vice-captain because he's the best leader right now, and then when one of those two leave in the next couple of years, you can then give it to Trent, that would have been fine. And again, it's not a big deal because it's only the captaincy. Alisson can still be a leader without an armband. I'm more talking to the people who was completely against the idea of him being captain. I think it would have been a good shout. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Trent's now got the vice-captaincy, which I wasn't seeing. In hindsight, I'm not surprised, but I never saw it coming. I thought it was going to be Virgil and Robbo, Virgil and Alisson. I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's a no-brainer when you think about how much more that elevates Trent now mentally. Because Trent mentally now needs to look at that and be like, wow, I'm now a serious dude at this football club, and if I don't make the most out of it, then that's a bit of a problem, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that's important to note. But all that and more is going to be talked about in tonight's live stream, so kind of look at this like the precursor. But anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate everyone who will still support the channel. And, yeah, man, big up yourselves. Smash a like on the video if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in a bizzle. Peace out, guys.